Have you ever walked into a meeting thinking you were there to discuss a problem, only to discover that you were the problem? Someone says, we missed the deadline because the handoff from your team was late. 6 people turn toward you, your brain opens 17 tabs at once. One tab wants to defend yourself, one wants to expose every message this person ignored, and one is quietly searching for a trapdoor under the conference table. This is what being thrown under the bus feels like at work. A complicated failure suddenly gets a very simple story, and your name is placed in the center of it. The obvious response is to fight the story immediately, correct every detail, name the real culprit, produce screenshots with the energy of a courtroom attorney who has waited years for this moment. But that response often makes the situation worse. Not because you should accept blame that is not yours. You should not. It gets worse because public blame is not only a factual problem, it is also a social positioning problem. The room is deciding what happened, who is credible, who is calm, and who can be trusted when something goes wrong. If you understand that mechanism, you can protect yourself without becoming the person who turns every meeting into a crime documentary. First, why do coworkers throw people under the bus? Sometimes it is deliberate. A person knows they dropped something, sees consequences approaching, and moves the spotlight before it reaches them. But often the mechanism is less theatrical. It is self-protective simplification. Work failures are messy. A deadline slips because the brief changed, approval came late, staffing was thin, the system failed twice, and 3 people made reasonable decisions using incomplete information. That story is accurate. It is also difficult to explain in 14 seconds while a senior leader is asking, how did this happen? So the mind compresses the story. It looks for one cause, one moment, or one person. The clearest available detail becomes the explanation. If your late handoff is visible but the 2 weeks of changing requirements are not, the handoff becomes the whole story. This is called attribution compression. A system failure gets compressed into a person failure because people are easier to point at than systems. There is also a status mechanism. When a mistake becomes visible, everyone near it experiences a small threat. Their competence, judgment, or reliability may be questioned. Blame creates distance from the threat. That was not my decision. I was waiting on their team. I raised the risk earlier. Each sentence may contain some truth, but each also moves the speaker one step away from the blast radius. The person who tells the first clean story often gains an advantage because rooms prefer a coherent explanation to an accurate pile of context. That is why silence can be dangerous. You may stay quiet because you want to look mature. You do not want to argue. You assume the facts will eventually speak for themselves. Unfortunately, facts at work are famously shy. They rarely enter a meeting alone, introduce themselves, and correct the record. Silence does not always look composed. In a public blame moment, it can look like agreement. The goal is not to become louder than the accusation. The goal is to interrupt the false simplicity before it hardens into the official version. There are 3 things to manage: the facts, the temperature, and the audience. Let us start with the temperature. Your first 10 seconds matter because people read emotional control as a credibility signal. If you explode, the room may remember your reaction more clearly than the original claim. Do not confuse calm with passive. Calm means your response is organized enough to be useful. Take one breath, lower your pace, then use a sentence that stops the story without starting a fight. Try, I want to clarify the sequence because that leaves out an important part of the handoff. Or, that is one part of what happened. There were 2 earlier decisions that affected the date. Notice what these phrases do. They do not say, you are lying. They do not say, this is ridiculous. They say the current explanation is incomplete, and they create space for a more accurate one. That distinction protects your position. You are correcting the record, not performing outrage. Next, manage the facts. When people feel attacked, they often unload every piece of evidence they possess. Actually, on Tuesday at 9:14, I sent an email, and then you reacted with a thumbs up, and then on Thursday you said, the more detail you pour into the room, the easier it is for everyone to stop listening. Use the 3-point factual reset. Point 1, the agreed expectation. Point 2, what changed. Point 3, what you did in response. For example, the original handoff date was Friday. On Wednesday, the scope expanded to include the new reporting requirement. I flagged that this would move delivery to Monday, and the revised date was acknowledged in the project thread. That is enough. You have restored the timeline, named the change, and shown your action. You have not asked the room to read your entire inbox like an archaeological archive. If you made a real mistake, own the exact part that belongs to you. Say, I should have escalated the risk sooner. That part is mine. The scope change is what moved the delivery date, and I should have made the impact more visible. Precise ownership increases credibility because it separates accountability from total blame. People trust someone who can say, "This part is mine," more than someone who insists every atom of the problem belongs to someone else. But do not apologize for the entire failure just to make the tension disappear. An oversized apology feels socially convenient in the moment. Later, it becomes evidence that you accepted the full story. Own your square inch, do not accept the whole parking lot. Now manage the audience. The coworker who blamed you is not always the person you need to persuade. The real audience may be the project owner, your manager, or the senior leader deciding whether you are reliable. This changes how you speak. Do not get trapped in a two-person argument. If your coworker says, "That is not what happened," resist the urge to play conversational table tennis. Return to the shared record and the decision the room needs to make. Try. We may remember the conversation differently. The written timeline shows the scope changed Wednesday and the revised date was acknowledged. For today, the decision is whether we reduce scope or move the launch. You have done two useful things. You anchored the disagreement to evidence, and you moved the room from blame toward action. That is a strong social position. You are not avoiding accountability, you are helping the group solve the actual problem. What if the accusation happens in a fast meeting and you do not have the facts in front of you? Do not guess. Say, "I do not want to reconstruct the timeline from memory. I will verify the dates and send the sequence after this meeting." Then add the boundary, "I do not agree that the delay came only from my team." This prevents silence from being interpreted as acceptance while giving you time to return with something accurate. After the meeting, follow up quickly, not with a furious essay copied to half the company. Send a short factual record to the people who were in the discussion or who own the work. Use 4 parts. To close the loop on today's discussion, then the agreed expectation, then the change or dependency, then your action and the next step. For example, to close the loop on today's discussion, the original delivery was Friday. The reporting scope was added Wednesday. I shared the Monday impact that afternoon, and the revised date was acknowledged. Going forward, I will flag any scope change in the project summary so the timing impact is visible to everyone. This is not petty documentation, it is operational memory. Documentation becomes political only when it is used as a hidden weapon. A shared timeline used consistently is simply good project hygiene. The best protection actually begins before anyone needs protection. There are 4 habits that make you harder to throw under the bus. First, confirm decisions in writing. After a meeting, send the smallest useful summary: what was decided, who owns what, and what changed. Do not write "as per my previous email," unless you want the sentence to arrive wearing tiny boxing gloves. Write, confirming today's decision and next steps. Neutral language keeps the record useful instead of making it feel like preemptive evidence in a trial. Second, expose dependencies early. If your work depends on approval, data, access, or another team, make that visible before the deadline. Say, delivery remains Friday if approval arrives by Tuesday. After Tuesday, the date moves 1 day for each day approval is delayed. Now the dependency is not a private fact living inside your head, it is part of the shared plan. Third, surface changes when they happen. Do not quietly absorb added scope and hope to become a legend. When the request changes, name the trade-off. We can add the new analysis and deliver Monday, or keep Friday and move that analysis to the next version. Which matters more? This turns a future blame argument into a present decision. Fourth, build lateral trust. People are less likely to assign you a careless story when they understand how you work. You do not need a campaign of strategic coffee chats. You need small, consistent signals, clear handoffs, early warnings, useful updates, and private conversations before public friction. If a coworker repeatedly blames you, address the pattern privately when the temperature is low. Do not open with, "You keep throwing me under the bus." That phrase guarantees a debate about intention. Describe the observable pattern and the effect. Try. In the last 2 project reviews, delays were described as coming from my handoff, but the timeline also included scope and approval changes. When only my handoff is named, the record becomes incomplete. In future reviews, I need us to present the full sequence, then make a specific request. Before the next review, let us agree on the timeline and the message together. This gives the relationship a repair path. If they respond well, the problem may have been pressure, habit, or poor coordination. If they deny the pattern and repeat it, you now have information. Stop relying on informal understanding. Keep shared records, bring your manager into project updates, and reduce opportunities for private ambiguity. Escalation should be about the work risk, not a character verdict. Say, we have a recurring mismatch in how project delays are represented. I want a shared status format so decisions, dependencies, and date changes are visible. That is stronger than saying Jordan is toxic, because it gives your manager something concrete to observe and fix. There are also mistakes to avoid. Do not retaliate by waiting for your coworker's next mistake and announcing it with fireworks. Revenge creates a workplace where both of you look unsafe. Do not collect screenshots for months without ever correcting the shared process. Evidence is useful, but a secret museum of resentment is not a system. Do not overcorrect every tiny detail in public. Protect the facts that affect responsibility, decisions, and reputation. Let harmless wording differences remain harmless. And do not make calmness into another performance where you never say what happened. Professional does not mean vague. You can be direct without being explosive. Here is the complete response in one sequence. In the moment, slow the temperature and interrupt the false simplicity. I want to clarify the sequence because that leaves out an important dependency. Then give the 3-point reset, expectation, change, response. Own your exact part if there is one. Move the room toward the decision. Afterward, send a short shared record. Then repair the process so the same ambiguity cannot be used again. Being thrown under the bus feels personal because your reputation is involved, but your strongest response is not a counterattack. It is a better record, a calmer frame, and a clearer path forward. The person who blames fastest may control the first 10 seconds. They do not have to control the final story. If this gave you language for a situation you have been replaying in your head, hit like and subscribe to Office Tells. And in the comments, tell me the most creative excuse you have ever heard in a meeting. Keep the names out of it. Legal has already had a long week.